Okay.
All right, hello and welcome to Untitled Project, the podcast. I'm your host Mario, and today we have two very special guests. We have my cousin Emil and my grandmother Gloria. How are you both doing today?
Everything goes Mario, but he already didn't know how to say my first name. It's Emil or Emil, not Emil.
All right, correct that.
No, he's good. I'm just joking because it's even though it's only 4 letters, it's a hard name to say for some people.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get? Wait, the question is, how do you get Emil out of Emil?
Yeah, good question. You tell me. That's your side of the family. The other side of the family always called me Emil. I crossed the street to this side of the family and it was Emil. I'm thinking, who am I? And my real name's Emilio, so you figure that out.
That's great.
Okay, so
Well, that's some of the nice names they call me on that side of the family.
I think our purpose here is to teach your generation what it was like in our generation to grow up in Brooklyn, New York.
Well, I don't know if we can teach them.
Well,
I think what we can do is try to explain to them how
yes.
we grew up, but we can't teach them.
That's true.
We
But
can't
maybe
teach-
they won't feel so, what's the word? So abused.
So abused, underprivileged.
Yes.
Oh, you don't know what underprivileged is. Well, you know what? I'll be honest with you. We didn't know what
No, we
underprivileged were.
didn't.
We thought what we had is what everybody had. Nothing. So we had pants that were up to here that didn't fit us, but that came from an older cousin. We had patches on our clothes, on our jeans. You guys buy clothes that way now. We were embarrassed to get clothes that way because we had to go to school with patches, but, who cared?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because we didn't know anybody lived any differently. But I like to start with the housing that we lived in.
What was wrong with the housing we lived in?
Well,
It was,
nothing.
you know what?
Except how many people in how small
Well,
quarters.
Grandpa, our grandfather, and grandmother, well, it was typical in the Italian, and even a lot of the immigrants, but instead of owning a home in the farm or in the country, they would buy a building. And like in our case, Grandpa and Grandma had a building, and as each daughter got married, I'm sure Grandpa would have rather thrown them out the window because he ended up with 5 girls.
Jeez.
And he did have a son, and unfortunately, Uncle Savino passed away at a young age. So anyway, Grandpa, that's what your mom says, Grandpa always scared me. I said, well, hell, if you had raised 5 daughters and your oldest daughter ends up with 3 daughters, you still have no grandsons. There's no male anywhere in the building yet, And then all of a sudden, they're getting married and they're having kids, and then each one gets a floor. Then his middle daughter, my mother, gets married and goes off.
Okay.
And then 2 years later, she comes back. and now he's got his middle daughter living with him and grandma, and she's got 2 boys. This is the male influence he's got in the house. Do you not think he would be an angry man? I got all these girls. They're having girls. I finally get a daughter who has sons, and look what they are, living with me.
And we're not quiet or calm, okay?
Wait. No, there was one of us that was very quiet and calm.
Yeah.
Then there was the nut job. That would be my brother Frankie, whose real name is not Frankie, it's Savino.
So where'd
We don't know where Frankie comes from.
we still don't know.
I don't have a middle name. Frankie has a middle name. His middle name is Nicholas. So it's Savino Nicholas. Where's Frankie come from? It's like, I can understand Emil, shortening Emilio because it's the same letters, except the I-O. But we don't get the Frankie part. To this day, we don't get the Frankie part, Oh, and that's a funny thing that you don't know, and I only found out in the last 8 or 9 years after my dad passed away, going through all his paperwork. I was named after his father, Emilio. But they missed a word, a letter, a name. My name should have been Emilio, and don't laugh when I tell you this, Luigi.
Oh my.
My grandfather's middle name that I didn't know even when my dad was already dead, gone. It was in the paperwork, and I called my cousin Junior up, was on that side of the family. I said, "Hey, Junior, who's Luigi?" He goes, "That was Poppy's name. That was what we call him, Poppy." I said, "But I'm going on 70 years old. I never knew Poppy had a middle name, and if I was named after him, how come I didn't have the middle name?" But I tell you what, everybody jokes when the Mario Brothers, the game.
Right, yeah.
Well, everybody, because I had the big mustache and the hair, they always joke that I look like Mario. Even my kids, they tell you, oh, you're just like Mario and Luigi. Well, guess what? I would have been a Luigi too. The family. We had so much fun. We all lived together. We all did things together. Even though we had our individualities, there was just different families, but we had the house, which to us was a great place to live. I mean, we lived on the top floor and we worked all the way down. We had a banister that if you were good, you can slide from the top floor. You can make your way all the way down. It was slick, and I think it was slick because we always slid on it. I wish Frankie was there. He'd tell you the story. The last banister, you came down the last flight of stairs, and there was a hallway, maybe from here to where your camera is. Maybe a little further than that. There was the front door.
Yeah.
I was going to be the big brave guy and come down forwards and not backwards. So I'm sitting I don't screw this thing up. I'm sitting at the top of the banister, and there's one shot all the way down. It's like going on a ski slope. I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking at the front door, and there's this hallway. It can't be maybe 6 feet wide, and I'm looking at it, and Frankie's down at the bottom. Go ahead, aim. I came down. I forgot to think about the fact that at the bottom of the banister, there's a big round thing. It's about this big and round.
Oh, no.
I'm lucky I have kids today. I came down that banister forward, I mean like a shot. I remember it today, and Frankie was laughing because when I hit that thing in the bottom, it blew me up off the banister. I went straight to the door. Boom! I landed on my stomach with my head in the door, just like this, like Superman. He fell out of the sky. And Frankie's over there. What are you laughing at? I mean, to this day, he says he wish he would have had a camera and taken a picture because it was just a funny thing.
But these guys have to know our sleeping arrangements.
Oh,
Oh yeah, this is fun. They don't believe it. They don't believe it.
Well, every apartment in the building was set up the same way. We had one bathroom. We had a coal stove. The coal stove was in the kitchen. We had a table, which Grandma used to tie Frankie and me up at the chairs. She used to watch the cowboy movies, and that's how they did it. So we had the table and the chairs, the coal stove. That's what we cooked on, and that's what heated.
That was our heat. Only heat.
That heated the house. That heated the whole your flat. Then you went through a little just a little walkway. I guess it was kind of Grandma must have put stuff like a pantry type thing, had some shelves. When you came out of that, you were in the parlor. When you think of a parlor and you think of an old movie, you're thinking of something very historical. And this is historical, all right? You came into the parlor and there was a couch. Typically that couch was what you people call today a pull-out sofa.
Okay.
Back then they called it a Castro convertible. And it had nothing to do with the guy in Cuba. The people who sold it, the store's name was Castro. And I don't know if he invented this bed, but it was called Castro convertible. And typically somebody somewhere in the family was going to sleep on that. Because the other room was one bedroom. And it was kind of long. And it wasn't big, but it was long and narrow. where we lived, Grandma and Grandpa had the bed by the window, and there was no closets, like a door, and there was a armoire, is where you hung your stuff. Grandma was funny. She used to keep a bottle of Bromo Seltzer in there.
Do you know what that is?
Bromo Seltzer would be...
Like Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah, it's like Alka-Seltzer, but the kids today, they eat these things that pop in your mouth, they fizzle and stuff, what do they call it?
Pop Rocks?
Pop Rocks? Okay.
Yeah.
It's the same type of thing, but this is medication. But Grandma always kept us in a blue bottle. So a lot of times when they weren't home, Frankie and I would go in there and we'd throw in our mouths because they would,
Yeah.
and then your mouth would foam up like you were going crazy. But anyway, Grandma and Grandpa had that bed, and they had the armoire. I'm picturing it right now. I can see it. Mm-hmm. And then they put a curtain up. That curtain was the separation from that bedroom to this bedroom. That's all it was. There was no walls, no doors.
You mean to the parlor?
Well, no. Where Frankie and I slept, we slept.
Two bedrooms?
Well, they put the curtain up.
Oh,
They made it two.
I see.
We can call it a 2-bedroom flat if you want, but it was the curtain. So the curtain separated us from Grandma and Grandpa. Frankie and I slept there, head to foot, in one bed, and in the parlor is where my mother slept. That was the Castro convertible. and then at some point in time, I think we were 4, 5, 6 years old. Grandpa finally bought a television, a TV set. Black and white back in those days. So, because the TV set goes in the parlor. That's where they put the TV set. Now, you can't go to sleep because the TV stays on until, and back then there used to be they did the national anthem at the end of the night, right. and some kind of it's a round thing with I forget what they call it, the end of the night thing, but. And it would then you hear this beep. Okay. That was the end of the TV. There was no TV till the next day. Yeah. So my mother couldn't go to bed because Grandma had to watch the Ed Sullivan Show or whatever show she could, late at night. So Mom went to bed after this TV went off. Frankie and I were in the back room, and that's where the back area of that bedroom where we slept. But as time went on. In our house, my mother remarried. Now she gets the back bedroom with my stepfather. Right. Grandma and Grandpa are still in the front part. I wish I could explain this, but it can't be like from that wall to that wall, maybe from that beam to here, and you got a curtain. That's it. Okay, envision that. Just kind of envision this all closed in. A window over there, just kind of like that. The bed, the armoire. A curtain and another bed, and then it goes into the parlor. Well, when my mom gets remarried, Frankie and I get the Castro convertible. We've come up in the world. We've got a real bed. It's a Castro convertible. This is not a real bed, but I get. Now we can't go to sleep until they turn the TV off. So they put us in that bedroom so they can watch TV. And then when TV goes off, we get moved out of that bedroom onto the Castro convertible so my mom and stepfather can go into that bedroom. Thank God my grandfather died because he never would have made it. He died right after all that happened. And this guy Grandpa was a funny guy. He came to this country. The story is, and Grandma told me this, when they came to this country, they came after World War I. And he wanted to. They were farmers on the eastern side of Italy in Bari, a village called Bari, right on the coast. And Grandpa and Grandma were farmers. This is what they did. Grandpa always wanted to raise grapes and he wanted to make wine. So he convinced Grandma, I guess, to come to America, the story. Everybody comes to America. And he wanted to go to California, because that's where the story was, where people can grow wine and have wineries and grow grapes and make their wine. I guess the 4 or 5 week crossing was a little rough for Grandma, because when she hit the harbor in New York City, and got off the boat, she told Grandpa, no. Everybody tried to convince her, you don't have to take a boat to California from New York City. You couldn't convince her that didn't have to get on a boat. So they ended up in Brooklyn. Poor Grandpa now, his whole dream was to grow grapes and make wine. So anyway, he
made wine though.
He did. He didn't make his wine.
Okay.
He didn't grow his grapes because you couldn't grow grapes in Brooklyn. The concrete, it's a little tough to grow. And our backyard was not the growing type of backyard that we had.
Have a backyard?
Yes, I thought your mother. Yes, we had a backyard. We hung the clothes out the window. That was in the backyard.
That's right, yeah.
We had the clotheslines going out the back.
Yeah.
But Grandpa, he knew the guy that owned the soda shop down the corner. In fact, that guy was Greek. But he would give Grandpa, the Coca-Cola used to come in big 1 gallon jugs, the syrup that they used to put in the machines to make Coke.
Right.
So Grandpa, I don't know how he worked to deal with them. He would give Grandpa the empty bottles. Grandpa ordered the grapes. I don't know, there was a truck would pull up once a week with the grapes that came in these wooden crates. I don't know if you remember the grapes. And then we had the cellar. Grandpa would take all the grapes down the cellar. He had 3 big barrels, big wooden wine barrels, just like you see in a regular winery, but it's a smaller version of it.
Right.
So, anyway, he would make wine, and everybody had a gallon jug of homemade wine on their table all the time. All the time. I think Grandpa had an extra gallon of wine for himself because Grandpa was always happy.
Happy?
Yes, he was always happy. After he came home, he was a happy man. He had that gallon of wine sitting on the table, and he would pour that wine. As we were, and you had the same thing. When we were kids, we all had a water glass. They started off, they'd put a little wine in the water glass and then a lot more water.
Yeah.
Then as we got older, you got a little bit more wine, a little less water. Until you got almost all wine, you never got to that point. But Grandpa, when he started drinking his wine, Grandpa liked his wine.
Yeah.
He just enjoyed making his wine. I think that was his release from raising 5 daughters in this crazy house that he had.
And what did he do he was delivered ice,
Well, that's what Grandpa did. In the wintertime, he delivered coal. In the summertime, he delivered ice.
Yeah.
So you've seen old movies where the guy with the leather thing on his shoulder and he had the hook and had a big ice block. That's what Grandpa did. And he would carry most of these things and go up and downstairs and he would deliver. Because back in those days, a refrigerator was an ice box. You put a block of ice in the refrigerator, and that's what kept your food cold. But that's what he did.
Okay, but I think they need to hear about how they took care of us and our hygiene and our medical, our well-being.
Oh, she's going to the enema. She's going straight to the enema story.
Jeez.
She wants to hear the enema story. Okay, the enema story. Now I've already given you a layout of the flat, of the apartment. Once a month, all the kids would have to get an enema. So all the kids would they'd line us up on the kitchen table. They had a line that went across the kitchen, and there was enema bags hanging down. Now remember,
Was that the same ravioli table as they?
no, they put they used to put the piece of plywood on top of the table for the
I
ravioli.
couldn't remember that.
Yeah, that was all floured and everything. No.
Okay, so it makes
So they would pour soapy warm water into these enema bags. One at a time. We got late. They gave us an enema. We all know what an enema is, right? You know what an enema is? Okay. Now remember, there's more kids than bathrooms in this house. So you have to be quick. When you got off that table, you had to make sure you could get in there before the next one got his enema before he got that again. Well, I've got a flat finger right here because I tried to get into the bathroom and my brother and her sister slammed the door before I could get in there and smashed my finger. And who got in trouble for that? Me!
Oh, yeah. Emil got in trouble.
My finger was flat as a board, bleeding like a pig. I just had an enema and I could get in the beating because I got my finger stuck in the door.
Wait, let's go on to beatings. Emil,
Oh, you
I
were-
don't know why, but Emil got more beatings than anybody I ever knew in my life. Frankie's smaller than Emil. He's thinner, smaller. And Grandma, his mother liked to beat them because she'd go to work in the city. She'd get off the subway. She'd walk home. And by the time she got home, all the neighbors would say how bad they were and all the mischief they were doing. So she'd come in crazy and just get them and beat the heck out of them. They didn't even know why they were getting beat. But Grandma she always wore an apron and she always had cookies in her pocket.
Yeah.
But she would grab Frankie, put him under her apron, and push Emil out because he was the bigger one.
I was the bigger one. I was the tough one. Mom would walk through the door. Well, as time went on, I knew what was going to happen because Frank and I used to go up on the roof. It was a flat roof. We used to go up on the roof and we used to look down where she'd get off the train and the bus, whatever it was that she came home on. And based on how many people talked to her, I knew what kind of a beating I was going to get when she got home.
With all statistics.
And what I didn't tell you in the beginning was, we lived on this side of Bridge Street. My dad's family lived across the street. So there was no way Frankie and I could get away with anything. The whole block was our family. We had the LaQuals over here, the Mascarillas over there. It was nuts. But yeah, my mother was, looking back today, they would have executed her because she was such a. I used to get beat so bad when I went to school. The nuns used to beat us in school because that's the way the nuns treated us back in those days. The nuns used to feel sorry for me because I used to go to school worse than when they would beat me up to go back home because. and Gloria will attest to this. When my mother lost it, when they called her Aunt Annie, when my mother would lose it, there wasn't anything that wasn't a weapon. Everything became a weapon. Everything became a weapon. There were times when my grandfather would try to grab the stuff she had in her hand because she was breaking brooms. She grabbed we had the coal stove. They're iron pokers. They don't break. She would take that and start hitting me. I have black and blue marks up and down me. And poor Grandpa's.
Oh, yeah, my dad. We lived below them, and we would hear that. My dad, very gentle, soft-hearted. He would go over to the, what do you call it, the hot water pipe.
With the pipe, he'd bang on the pipe.
He'd bang on there to try to divert her, But Emil said her eyes told him.
When my mother got me down on the ground, on the floor, it's usually in the kitchen, on the kitchen floor, she would kneel on top of me, on top of my shoulders. I couldn't stop. I couldn't protect myself. And she was no little woman either. She wasn't like that she was tall, but she was like a bulldog. She'd get on top of me, and I could see her eyes. When her eyes would roll back, there was no stopping her. Uncle Victor would come upstairs from downstairs, and he would try to put, Anna, leave you. You're going to kill your son. My grandfather was trying to pull. But you know what?
But she loved
boys. Yeah. No, I tell you, I there's
And
not
you would
one
do
day,
anything
not
for her.
one day would go by, even as I got older and that I would look back and regret growing up the way we grew up. Even though she beat Mario. I can't make this up.
Yeah,
She would, but she had a tough life, and so, but I never thought of it that way. I just, Frank and I did things and used to drive her crazy and whatever. Two brothers, and it was just a daily routine. I was going to get a beating one way or the other. It depended. It was going to be the broom. It was going to be a stick. It was going to be they used to have the rolling pins. It was either that And the poker, I would try to hide the poker because the poker wasn't giving up. It didn't give up. There was no slack in the poker. It was just going to be. You were going to have marks on you with the poker. I think my dad, when he used to come and get us every weekend, he used to inspect me. It's like he was going to be able to do something.
Oh, and say why they broke up over your name.
Well, that
was part of it, right? Oh
why is it always about me though? You had a life
No.
too. You live right downstairs.
Yeah, but yours is much more interesting. Oh my God.
The story goes like this. When my mom and dad got married after the war, and my mom told me that she and my dad, because back in those days you didn't know, you got pregnant but you didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl.
Right.
And they decided that if it was a boy, ended up being me, they were going to name it after my dad, Nicholas Francis. That was my dad's name. Mom has me, and the story goes in the hospital, and Aunt Margaret, Gloria's mother, will attest, well, she's not here now, but my mom had a mouth like a truck driver. When she was giving birth, she called my dad names that you can't find in the dictionary anymore. They're just eliminated. They're gone. But they were married. And I was born 9 months after they were married, so I was a honeymoon baby, quote unquote. So my mom, they come home from the hospital. My name is Nicholas Francis. That's my name. The formal birth certificate comes, everything, and the name is Emilio. And my mother's going, who's Emilio? My dad doesn't say nothing. He's scared. He's got to be scared to death of my mother now because he didn't have the guts to stop his parents. His parents, well, my grandfather, his father knew people. They went to the hospital and had my name changed. So this.
You wonder why she was angry, right?
This already started and listen, my mother wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. I gotta say this because when she told me the story years later, I said, Mom, what do you mean who was Emilio? That's your father-in-law. Don't you when your marriage license, the son of Emilio, and my grandmother's name is Immaculata. Don't laugh. That was her name. That was her name, Immaculata. Did you see it on your marriage license, that Emilio Mascarello? She goes, well, I didn't know that. I didn't pay attention. Everybody in the neighborhood called him Uncle Willie. She thought her father-in-law's name was Willie. So anyway, here she gets the birth certificate, and there's Emilio on it, and she has no clue who this is. So my father has to explain to her that, well, you know, in the family, the first son of the first son is the first son of the first son is named after the first son of the first son of the first son. You know, they just skip a generation. So
we got to fast forward to Emil, father, very calm father, never beat his kids or anything.
No, touch my kids.
No, but Emil was a disciplinarian with his words, I would think, right?
Well, I disciplined them.
Okay, so
let's not get into it.
No, we're gonna just talk about Thanksgiving. We gotta talk about Thanksgiving.
Everybody gets excited about Thanksgiving. This must happen in everybody's family at least once.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, you have to know. He's running out of tape. You have to know the whole dynamics of the family.
Yeah.
The dynamics. My kids are getting older now. They're a lot older. In fact, the girls are off to school, and
2 girls and a boy.
2 girls and a boy. I had 2 girls, Jennifer, Susan, and Nikki. Nikki's the baby. I don't know what you're doing over there.
Directing.
Why don't you go upstairs?
Director, stop.
Don't ruin it. He's going to cut all of you out because you're just driving everybody crazy. Leave.
They'll probably leave it in. Go ahead.
Anyway, the story is this. You got to set the backdrop. It can't just be the Thanksgiving Day.
Right.
Jennifer's married, gone. Susan is off to college. Her room, she had a waterbed, and my son had a waterbed. Nikki had a girlfriend. Nikki and I lived together. I'm not married anymore. I'm raising Nick. He was 16, 15, 16. One day I come home and there's water coming through the garage. And above the garage is Nikki's bedroom. But I'm thinking, what happened? So I go upstairs and check the bedroom. Well, I checked the bathroom first, so I'm thinking that's where the water's coming from. But I went into his bedroom and his mattress was deflated, gone. A girlfriend of his got mad at him, came home, got into the house, which I'm sure he let her in at some point in time, and stabbed the waterbed to death. Now, to be fair to her, she comes from Colombia, so she had a little temper. Anyway, she stabbed the waterbed to death. All the water came from the waterbed that came into the garage. So I say, not a problem. I mean, I get upset and everything, but where's he going to sleep? Well, I take Susan's waterbed, and I take her waterbed and give it to Nick. Now, Susan comes home. She's not happy. I gave her brother her waterbed. This is like weeks before Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Weeks before Thanksgiving. Anyway, we get all that worked out. It's all everybody's cool. Now comes I'm dating a young lady named Marianne. She was about 5'10", 5'11", very skinny. Not quite boisterous as we are in our family.
A little normal. She's on the normal side.
Normal is what you make of it. Anyway, so Thanksgiving's coming around. She wants to have Thanksgiving with the family. My two daughters, Jennifer and Susan, who are not the quietest girls in the world, decide, Pop, we're going to make Thanksgiving dinner for you. One doesn't know how to cook. The other one doesn't do anything. So anyway, they come to the house, and poor Marianne is there with me. And they told her, don't even come in the kitchen. Stay out of the kitchen. So I said to her, you know what, these are my girls. You know, they're trying to be nice. Just let them do what they want to do. Let them do what they want to do. So I go in and out of the kitchen. Jennifer's fighting with Susan because Susan doesn't want to set the table. And traditionally, you always set the table. I said, Jennifer, Susan never did anything. I don't know where's this tradition coming from? As time goes on, I said to Susan, your brother's coming home. When he gets in the house, I don't want to hear anything about the waterbed. Do not start anything about the waterbed. Because I know in my mind this is going to create an argument. Now, Susan's 4'11". Nikki's about 6 foot, maybe 6'1". But he's the baby. He comes through the front door. The first thing she does is start screaming at him about the waterbed. The first thing she starts doing. In the kitchen, I got Jennifer yelling that no, she's not getting any help. I got poor Marianne. I think she got behind the curtain somewhere in the living room. She doesn't even want to know what's going on. There's an argument that you're not cooking this right, you're not doing that right, you're not setting the table right. Nobody, they're arguing about everything. Susan and Nikki are fighting about the bed. This poor girl, I think she wants to crawl in a corner or just leave. I'm sitting there, and I'm trying, and the football game comes on. So I'm thinking, okay, this'll get my attention away from what's going on around me because I am not a happy camper right now, and I'm looking at that poor girl, and she's like, she's part of the wall now. She does not want to be seen. Everything gets done. Friends of theirs come over, because I said, if you got any friends that want to have Thanksgiving with us, so there must be 15, 16, 18 people. I forget how many were there. Table's all set. Turkey's still in the oven. And we're all sitting down, and we do the what do you do with
The prayer.
The prayer and stuff. We're doing all that. but I could tell there's a little tension in the air. So, Jennifer, the oldest one, is sitting next to Nick, the baby. Baby's a big baby, and there's all these friends and their kids, and everybody's around the table, and I'm sitting at the head of the table over there, and I don't know exactly what happened, but the next thing I see is Jennifer turns around and goes, "Pow!" Punches Nicky right in the face, right in the face. He gets up off the chair. He goes out the back door. He jumps over a 6-foot fence. He's gone. He's mad. He's fighting. Everybody's looking. By this time now, I don't see anything. I don't see anything. I calmly get up, go into the garage. I get garbage cans. I bring the garbage cans into the dining room. I take everything on the dining room table and I slide everything into the garbage cans. All the food, dishes, plates, bowls. Everything goes. I dump everything in the garbage can. I take the other garbage can. I go into the kitchen. I take the oven, open the oven. I grab the turkey with my bare hands. I throw that in the garbage can. I go in the refrigerator, the freezer, desserts. Everything is in the garbage cans. When I finally get everything in the garbage cans, I drag them out to the garage. I come back in the house. There's nobody there. There's nobody in the house. I mean, I don't know what happened or where they went. I mean, I know what happened and why it happened. I don't know where they went. But when I finally got back to my senses, I'm telling you what, there was the refrigerator, freezer, oven, stuff. There was nothing left. Nothing. All in garbage cans. And nobody in the house. I mean, I sat down on the couch. I turned the football game on, and I'm watching the football game. Where's the girlfriend? Where is the girlfriend? The girlfriend, I don't know where she came out of, a closet, but she comes back into the room, she goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" She goes, "You just threw everything into the garbage cans." I go, "Yeah, what's wrong with that?" She goes, "Would you like me to make it?" I said, "No, I'm good. I'm gonna watch the football game. I'm calm." And I guess, I don't know what she did. I think she called, she got a hold of the kids, because back then we didn't have cell phones, we had pagers.
Right.
And each one of the kids had a pager.
Your garbage man was happy the next day, wasn't
I have no idea who was happy about what, but there was nothing left in the house to eat. I mean, I threw stuff away that wasn't even part of Thanksgiving. It was, everything went into the garbage cans. So I think she got a hold of the girls or Nikki or somebody, and they went out and got something and brought it home, so we could at least have something to eat.
Right.
Things were calmer by then. I did so much in a 5-minute period of time. I can't even remember all of what I did, but whatever I did, it scattered people from neighborhoods. They disappeared. Everybody was gone.
That's a memory.
There are times when the kids come to the house now, and they're all, my kids have kids, and they have grandkids and whatever, and they still have the same friends. And sometimes they'll come visit, and they'll call, "Hey, we're at Dad's house. Why don't you guys come down?" And they come to the house. And they go, "Are we having turkey today?" They all remember.
Oh, I bet they do.
They all remember that story. And I said, "What exactly happened?" They go, "Listen, we don't know exactly what happened. Jennifer punched Nick, and to this day, I don't know why she turned around. I mean, she just hauled off and cold cocked them like they were, in a punching, in a boxing. Boom. Anyway, that whatever that did, it was a trigger.
Yeah, you snapped.
And I snapped, and I think about my mother, her eyes rolling back. I mean, I was blind. But yeah, there was garbage cans full of everything. Everything in the house was gone. And for some reason, this story gets told.
Oh yes.
Once
it's a classic. We always want to hear that story.
I think the first time I told the story,
Oh my
I think it was at my 60th. You guys were at the house.
Oh my God, we laughed. So hard.
And I had a fireplace in this house on Bayou Lane. I had the boat in the back and everything, and the fireplace was it was up high like this. So Gloria said, "Hey, tell the Thanksgiving story." Well, but this time it's my it was my 60th birthday. The whole family was there. We had a big party at some place. And we all went back to my place, and I get up on the stage. I get up on the stage, and I start explaining. The sad part is the kids are there. And Susan says, "I did not do that." Now we're going to start, right? Susan, the first thing I said to you was, do not bring up the waterbed. You had to bring up, as soon as your brother walked, he didn't even turn the doorknob and you started on him about the waterbed. And you want to know, that is not exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Oh, it's exactly what happened. That's what, and as far as Marianne, I don't know where she went. She was hiding somewhere in the house, making herself as small. She was a tall girl, but she was trying to make herself, she couldn't get any smaller.
Right, oh my gosh. That is a classic.
As I've learned as time has gone on,
That's a good one.
that's a story that it's not it's not as normal as I thought it was. But you have to understand, we come from a family of not so much your grandmother. This one was going to be a nun. But there was a lot of emotions in our family.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
I'm sure your grandmother told you. We Grandpa and Grandma had a place out in Jersey, the bungalow.
Our summer home.
Our summer cottage. The Roosevelts had Hyde Park. We had Wayne, New Jersey.
Oh my God! Yes.
We had one building.
This is where we went in the summer, all of us.
Every summer had a little lake way in the back. I don't know how we used to get to the lake. It was I don't know if it was a lake, it was a pond or something. It was a water hole.
It's full of snakes. Yeah,
well, you always said
was.
this. I don't remember the snakes so much.
You'd see these snakes like this all through the water.
They were frogs.
No, they were snakes.
So we had one big building, and it had two rooms. It had a screened-in kind of a porch where we would have a table, and that's if it was raining, we ate in there. The other room was one big giant bedroom. One. And we all slept in that
Oh,
big...
wait, first of all, there's no heat, no electricity.
Oh, there's nothing.
No water, nothing.
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 The kitchen was another building that was way away from the main house.
You pumped the water.
It had a water pump and everything. That's where they cooked.
The bathroom was?
The bathroom was what they call it a backhouse, which is called a back house.
Outhouse.
An outhouse. We always thought when they used to say backhouse, that was bathroom in Italian. It is not bathroom in Italian. It was the way they pronounced outhouse.
And it was a walk.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, it's like from here to Westminster. I mean, it was not around the corner. It was not like I gotta go pee. So no. If you gotta go pee, you're peeing in the pot. There was a pot.
Oh, we had a pee pot.
We had a pee pot in there. So you that's where you pee because you were not going out there.
Right.
With the gorillas and stuff to go.
And you try to sleep with all your cousins peeing all night, and all you heard was peeing in that pot because that made noise.
And guess what happens when one starts to pee? Everybody's got to pee. You know how that goes, right? So these are our evenings. Our daytime was, thank God, the weather was good. So we go to the pond or to the watering hole, or we played in the back, and the typical thing was, and I go back to my mother, the typical thing was Mom chasing Frankie and me around the building, and it was up on blocks. It wasn't on the ground.
Because it flooded all the time.
It always flooded there. So Frankie and I would slide under the building, under the house, and we watched my mother's little chubby legs. We could see where she was. She goes, and she was going, "You're going to come out sometime. You're going to come out sometime." Frankie says, "Hey, we got to go out." I said, no, don't go out. Don't go out there. She's going to kill you. Hey, we got to go out there. I said, "Frank, you want to go out there because she's not going to get you. She's going to get me." "No, I'm not going out there." Because you see them little fat legs. "You got to come out sometime." Oh man, we used to have fun.
Oh my God.
And then the uncles would come every weekend because they worked during the week, and they would come up and what reminds me so much of this was we're doing some stuff with our pictures. We're cleaning up and straightening and organizing pictures to the last month. And there's a picture that I saw that Uncle Pappas, Aunt Jenny's husband, our Uncle Pappas, he had a station wagon. And he would load all of us into the station. And we're not talking 2 or 3 cousins. We're talking a family full of people. We got like 20 of us. The station wagon, there's Uncle Pappas. He was a husky guy. He's got his arm out there and he's smoking a cigarette and he's got his hand on the steering wheel. The front of the car is facing up. We're so loaded right to the tailgate. People hanging off the tailgate. The back end is like this. The car is on this kind of an angle, and Uncle Pappas would. That's how we used to go to the water to the watering hole. But man, hey, you know what? Every summer we went, and I remember the end
What
of
did
the.
we sleep on? Because it was just one big empty room.
I
can't
guess
remember.
you know it's like I guess the immigrants the way they did it threw mattresses on the floor, blankets on them. We all slept in there. I never even thought about it. You didn't feel uncomfortable. You just
Except for that pan waking you up.
you were so tired from the day. I mean, we did a lot. We just did a lot of stuff. See, and that's why I said when you look back at that, we didn't know any better. We thought everybody had this.
Right.
Everybody had this.
Yeah.
And the biggest excitement in the bungalow was not so much my mother chasing Frankie and me around the house, but Grandpa and the neighbor. There was a peach tree.
Yeah.
And some of the peach tree was on our side of the property.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was the two of them, this little old Italian lady and Grandpa fighting each other over the peaches in this peach tree.
And we didn't have a stove. We just had the fire. They used to cook.
They used to cook. I don't know if there was a stove.
I just remember that fire.
There might have been a coal stove in the kitchen. It's hard to. The kitchen was so.
It was just the place
little,
to pump the water.
Yeah, but that's where they washed the dishes. When they washed dishes and stuff, everything was done in that little kitchen.
But I don't think there was a.
But we had a table. We had the table in the building.
Yeah.
And we had a table outside under that big tree, that huge tree.
Yeah.
When the weather was nice, we ate outside, and when the weather was bad, we ate inside. But you know what? I don't know. We had a lot of fun growing up. And
I mean, this is weird, but I remember Grandma there was those big butterflies, and she'd pick one out, and before you know it, she'd make a barrette out of it. Put it in your hair. Oh my God, butterflies.
The thing about Grandma, unlike Grandpa, who liked his wine, there's pictures, you cannot see a picture of Grandma smiling.
No.
Grandma didn't.
Or Grandpa.
Now, Grandpa, there was a lot of pictures of him not smiling, but there was a lot of pictures of him smiling.
A
Yeah.
lot of pictures of him. I'd like to see those.
Oh no, we've got him smiling, yeah, because he enjoyed his wine.
Yeah.
Grandpa, but again, that's all he wanted to do. Yeah. He didn't want to have 5 daughters. He didn't want to have all these people.
But so stubborn. He didn't have to die so young, but he wouldn't go to the hospital, right?
That the story is he had a hernia. I don't know what kind of hernia it was, but he refused to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And he died at home. And he was only in his late 60s.
Yeah.
He wasn't like an old man. He
Go.
just would not go to the doctor. Now this guy was not a little. He was a husky man. He was probably 5'10", 5'11".
I remember him real red-faced.
That's the wine. I keep telling you, he liked his wine.
I'd pass him in the hallway and I'd be like,
but you knew when he would come home. He'd come home.
oh yeah, boom, boom. And I was like, okay, you just froze.
This poor,
gosh.
not only did he have 5 daughters, he lived on the top floor. Why would you do that? You're the oldest, you own the house. Stay on the bottom floor. Let the other ones go on the top floor. See, that's where the difference. My dad's family, his parents, they lived on the bottom floor. They didn't go and live on the top floor. But we lived on the top floor with Grandma and Grandpa, and you knew when he came home because it was dum, 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 dum. And then he'd have to go to the bathroom. Remember, one bathroom in each floor.
And bath time, since there was no heat in the bathroom, and you had to heat the water to put in the bathtub. So it was
once a week and all the kids at once. So you had to, one got quick bath, freezing, crying, then the other one went in, and then the third one
But
went
by the time you got to be, the water was a lot colder and a lot dirtier. So you weren't getting the hot, clean water. You were getting, so the older kids got it it was a progression. The older ones got the benefit of the nice hot, cool, clean water, and the younger ones, the way it should be, got dirty, cold water. You hope with one would leave, and then you'd move up a grade. You move up a grade. Hey, there's pictures of her sister, me, and Frankie in a tub in the bungalow.
Bucket.
Won't get
Yeah.
washed at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. But the lesson here is you young kids who think you're being abused or have it hard. You
But see,
have to
again,
be
and not to make light of it. I never, all my cousins that were around, aunts and uncles, they all felt bad for Frankie and I because my mom would, she really would lose it. But you know what? We never looked at it that way. We never thought it was a terrible. I mean, we just never. I never looked back at thinking mom was a terrible person.
No.
If you read it in a book, they should have put her in the electric chair. This woman had no right to have kids. But we didn't look at it that way. It was just.
Not only that, I mean, the other side of it was she adored her boys, and anybody who would listen, she would say, "Look how handsome, how wonderful they are."
Yeah.
So it was two-sided there. She
till
loved her boys.
So she got us behind the door. If we got in trouble as we got older, and she would back us up. My sons didn't do that.
Right.
Don't you ever talk. Don't you say anything bad about my sons. But on the way home, Mario, we got beat to death all the way down to the house. She would just start whacking and whacking. And I got to tell you, she was not a small woman. She wasn't tall.
She was
But
strong.
she was. I saw her one time. She had and back in those days, the garbage cans were steel. They were steel cans. She would fill up the ashes from the coal stove. I swear to God, this is what made me start working out, start exercising. She had one can in this hand, one can in this hand, and she picked each one up full of ashes and walked it out to the front. And I'm thinking, holy mackerel, how do you do that? You can't pick up an empty can, well, a full one.
Well, that's how you became the bionic man.
Well,
it must have been your genes.
Again, this is going back. We had a neighbor. It was the family next to us. That building, they were we called them colored back then. They were a black family. Grandpa was never happy, which I didn't know, but he wasn't happy about black people. But we didn't know. We grew up with them, and no big deal. But there was this one kid, Harold. I don't know if you remember Harold White. He was around our age, Joni and my age. Most of us would be playing on the stoop or we'd out there, and he'd walk by and hit one and run. This was a thing for him to do all the time. You'd think we would catch on, but here comes Harold. Don't stand out there. He's going to hit you and run. He would do this. And I'll never forget this. I don't know if Joni remembers it, but I'll never forget it. Joni and I were on the front step, and we were playing jump rope, or we were doing something. Because Joni and I always played together because we're about the same age. Harold came by. Joni and I were just involved in ourselves with each other, and punched her in the stomach hard, and she doubled over and she let out a moan. I never got into a fight before. I must have been maybe 8, 9, maybe 10. I forget. But whatever happened, whatever he did to her, made me snap. I chased him into his building. His building was like where that window was from here. He ran in there. I ran into there. As I ran in, I grabbed 2 garbage can tops, steel. He ran upstairs into his apartment where his mother was. I ran right through the door with those covers, and his mother said, "Do whatever you have to do," because she knew that's what he would hit people and run. I went through that bedroom with those steel can tops, and I beat the living daylights out of that guy. He never touched us again. Aunt Margaret, when I finally again, the whites of my eyes, I guess, I don't know. I finally came back down, and I went over to check on Joni. Aunt Margaret was down there, and she said, Emil, don't ever let anybody hit a woman in the stomach, or hit a woman at all, but especially in the stomach. Your mother told me that. And from that time on, I don't know, I was a different kid. I became a person that would stand up for myself, I guess is how you look at it. But whatever he did to Joni made me snap. So
then Abel became a New York City policeman.
well,
And the
he got
worst part of
the South part. Yeah, that was when I got. Well, first I went into the service, and of course I thought I did the right thing back in '64, joining the Navy. I wanted to join the Marines. My uncle convinced me to join the Navy, and so I joined the Navy. Vietnam was not a big issue back in '64, but it became an issue in '65. And
you were only 17.
I was 17 when I went in, and the Navy decided they wanted to do a little bit more than just have ships and stuff out there. So they put a group together of 45 guys. Why I was picked as one of them, I don't know to this day, but I was picked and went into all kind of special training and stuff, and sent to Vietnam. But after I finished I did 3 tours over there. And after I got home, now being a cop wasn't my idea. Don't sit there and think that, oh, when you grow up you want to be a cop. No, that was not my idea. I was not the kind of kid that was going to grow up to be a cop.
Well, wait, before you go on to the cop, I never asked you this question. If you had to do it again, would you have joined and gone to Vietnam?
Yeah.
Why?
I'd do it. No, because to me it was the right thing to do.
Even though you experienced so much.
Everybody experienced stuff. You know, Gloria, here's the way I looked at it. Here's the way I thought about it as time went on and as I've gotten older. Our families came from Italy to come to this country. And this country was good to our families. No matter how we lived, craziness, it was good to our families. And I look at, I got to look at my dad. When Germany was starting to take over Europe, we weren't in the war yet. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather told my dad that he wanted him to go back to Italy and join the Italian army with Mussolini. That's what he thought was the right thing. My dad this is the honest thing, my dad told his father, no, we're Americans, I'm joining the American army. So he joined the American army before we even got in the war. I guess he was 20 years old, 21 years old, so he joined the army. The war broke out a couple of years later. He was already in the army. And he went off. He was on one of the first Liberty ships, they called them Liberty ships, that left New York Harbor to go over to Europe. So he went to North Africa. He fought in North Africa. He fought in Sicily. He fought in Italy. And I think a lot of that had to do with he could speak Italian, and so they used him to see what to talk to people. And so as I got older and whatever went into the service, like I said, the war wasn't a big issue in Vietnam, but I thought, I'm going to join up. Number one is I hated school. I was tired of school. Right. School was boring to me. I just nothing to do with school. And I wanted to get out. Yeah. And for me, that was a way of getting out. Yeah. And I joined up. Like I said, the Marines or the Army was really where my head was headed. But my uncle convinced me. He says, what do you want to join the Army and the Marines for? They don't do nothing but fight. He says, you're fighting all the time in the street. What do you want to get in fights for? He says, you join the Navy, you learn a trade. You could become a boilerman, a plumber, the electrician. They have different trades in the air, in the Navy. I thought about that, and okay. So they said, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I'd like to be a boilerman. Nobody wants to be a boilerman in the Navy. This guy must have thought he found a real fool. Oh, you want to be a boilerman? Oh, that's not going to be a problem. We are short of boilermen. Those old ships were steam driven, so boilermen, you're down in the engine, you're down in the boiler room. It sucked. It was not a fun place to be. Anyway, it didn't take me too long to get out of that position and become what they called an engineman, and I became an engineman. But by that time I I took some tests and moved up in rank and stuff. But then, like I said, Vietnam got bigger. The Navy decided they wanted to do more. I got pulled in. But my dad, what are you going to do when you get out? I didn't want to get out of the service. I was going to stay in. I was going to make it a career because here I thought, okay, Vietnam was Vietnam. But I thought, you know what? They feed me. I got a roof over my head. I got a place to stay. I can get in trouble, and they still take care of me. Because I was put in the brig a few times. In fact, in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, I was put in the brig. But that's another story. My mother turned me into the chaplain. But that's a whole different story. So I thought about staying in, but the Navy decided, you've been here long enough. You need to go home. My father said, I filled out an application for you to be a New York City policeman. I go, what? He said, everything is done. All you have to do is take the test when you get home. I'm thinking, of all the people to be a cop, me? I got thrown out of town. Croton on the Hudson, this little town that we lived in, where we moved up when we left the city from Brooklyn to upstate New York. Little town called Croton on. That's where I met both my wives.
That's another story.
I literally, at 15 years old, I think I might have been going on 16. Literally had to go to court, and the judge told my mother he cannot live in this town anymore. He has a father that lives in New York City because they knew the situation. He needs to move back to live with his father. He cannot stay in this town. I got thrown out of town. Literally thrown out of town. My father wants me to be a cop. Anyway, I take the test. I passed the test, but New York's on a hiring freeze at that time, so I do other stuff and whatever. But then everything works out, and lo and behold, I go through the academy. I graduated top of my class, of all things. Then they have a big ceremony with, I think it was 700 cadets. I had the highest overall academic and physical fitness average out of all the cadets. And I'm graduating #1 in the academy in New York City. Frankie's graduating #1 in the Navy, not the Navy Academy, but the aviation school down in Pensacola. So, I guess we were pretty good guys. So as much trouble as we got in. And anyway, I ended up in the South Bronx in New York, which was one of the worst neighborhoods back in those days. It was considered the highest crime precinct in the country. It was bad, but
Is that Harlem?
No. Harlem was a walk in the park compared to the South Bronx. Oh yeah. Harlem was what everybody talked about. The South Bronx was that's where all the bad people went to from Harlem. They went to the South Bronx. The South Bronx was. I remember we had roll call. We're out of the academy. The academy in New York City is pretty. It's pretty intense. It's 6 months. It's academic and physical fitness. When you leave the Academy of New York City, you graduate from there, you've got about 20 to 20 some odd credit towards college. Because you've gone to John Jay, you've gone to Pace, you've gone to Columbia, you've gone to New York University. And I continued my education when I was a cop. I finally graduated from, through night school and day school and stuff. But I remember we were at the precinct, and we have roll call. It's a paramilitary type thing, cops. And so back in those days, you were the third man in the car. They had the two partners, and they put you as a third man to train, so you understand what's going on. And so I said to the two guys, I was with this guy Artie, and I forget his partner's name. I said, "So, hey, what do we do? What's going on?" He says, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, we're gonna go do something, get some action, anything, He says, "Well, if you want to make an arrest, just go outside and grab somebody." I go, "What do you mean just go outside and grab somebody? I just studied law. You just go outside and grab somebody." He says, "Hey, you want to make an arrest? Go outside, grab somebody. I guarantee he's wanted for something." That's how bad that precinct. That's how bad that precinct was. It was. But I tell you what, I never had so much fun in all my life than being a New York City cop in the South Bronx. It was and maybe it's because of me, my personality. It was non-stop action. You didn't have time to do anything except go on something. You were chasing somebody, running across rooftops, jumping down fire escapes, jumping out windows.
Yeah, but didn't you get shot?
No, I didn't get shot there. I got shot after that. No, I didn't get shot there.
Jeez,
No, I got shot after that. That's
another story.
that's another story. But being a cop in New York City, it was so anyway, we're the third man in the car, and this went on for quite a little while. I'm thinking, hey, these two guys say, hey kids, just stay in the back. Listen, I'm a combat vet for Vietnam. I did 3 tours in Vietnam. Kids, stay in the back. So I sit there and they go do their thing and they come back and they either made an arrest or whatever they. After about a month or so of this, I'm thinking, no, this ain't working. I'm not getting anything out of this. So I go up to the front to the sergeant and I say, Sarge, I want to talk to the captain. He says, well, he's got an open door policy. You know, if you want to go talk to him, go see him. So I go in there and I forget the captain's name. And I told him who he was. He says, Mascarello. He says, that's a familiar name. He said, goes through all his paperwork. He goes, what are you doing here in the South Bronx? I go, that's where they assigned me. He said, you graduated at the top of your class. You're supposed to be in the academy. I go, what do you mean in the academy? He says, they've got you down to be an instructor in the academy. I go, no, I don't want to be an instructor in the academy. He says, well, anyway, he says, what can I do for you? I said, well, I understand the policy, the third man in the car, training, to get familiar with the area, the neighborhood, just to see how things are going, get familiar with this. It's an orientation process. He says, yeah, we've decided to do that. It seems to work out pretty good. I said, it's not working. He said, what do you mean? I'm like, it's not working. I said, I'm in the back seat and I don't get to do anything. The 2 guys in the front, they go off and do something, they come back and, He said, well, what is your idea? I said, well, my idea is let me pick a partner and give me 90 days and see how that works out. He says, that's not going to work. That's not the way they work it. He says, but I'll tell you what. You have somebody in mind? I said, yeah. I said, I've got a guy I went through the academy with. We're pretty close. Another, Anthony Bucello, Italian kid. He was a Marine, Vietnam. But most of us that went to the South Bronx were Vietnam combat vets, that's another strange story. They sent us there for a reason.
Right.
So anyway, so I go out and I said, Anthony, I talked to the captain. I says, I want to partner up. You and I partners. We got 90 days trial run to see what we can do. Well, we became good cops. We did a lot of stuff, made a lot of arrests, did a lot of things. Sometimes we got in a little trouble, but most of the time it was we were good cops, and we stayed partners for it was about 5 or 6 years, and then we started to get a little bit too involved. So, and Anthony was another Italian kid. He had a temper, and sometimes he didn't filter what he said to the captain or the sergeant or the lieutenant. Anyway, they split us up. They sent him to Manhattan. They sent me up to the North Bronx. And then that's where I got hurt up there, and they retired me. But
it's really interesting stories. But
I got more. You want? How much time you got? Is your battery gonna last?
Well, unfortunately, we do have a bit of a time crunch, but I do want to take some time because before I started the show, I asked around for people to come up with questions for the 2 of you.
Really?
Oh,
interesting.
So,
do I know them?
No, all these questions are coming in anonymously.
Yeah, anonymously?
Oh, geez.
Don't let me find out who they are.
Do you know who they are?
No.
He's lying.
Okay. So the first question we have here is, when have you been your happiest?
When have I been my happiest? Oh, man, that's a tough question. I can't... I've been happy most of my life, Mario. There are times I was disappointed, and I would say that would be really when my mother died. I was unhappy. When Grandma died, and they sent me home for her funeral. My grandma raised us, I was sad.
Now he wants to know when you were the happiest.
Well, I'm trying to. Those are the
trying to
times I wasn't
cross
happy.
those out.
Most of the time I was. I've been happy, and I would make myself do things to be happy. People dying, your family makes you unhappy. But other than that, no. Growing up. Let me put. If I have to narrow it down, growing up.
Okay.
I was is the happiest with all the cousins, with all the aunts and uncles.
So this next question, it's what is your greatest achievement? Or no, not achievement, accomplishment. Sorry.
My greatest accomplishment, it's probably having 3 kids. I know it sounds silly, but having 3 kids and not having, I've got 5 grandkids, but having my 3 kids. Yeah.
None of the shit I would even answer.
Hey, where you wanted to? These questions are for you too.
How did you end up where you are today?
Oh God. Being lucky. Being a survivor. I'll if I have to give you a word, being a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
What was the question?
How did you end up where you are today?
That's survivor. That's the one word comes to mind for me.
This is the last question. It's a bit of a silly one, but it's also holiday themed.
If we're talking Thanksgiving again, I'm going to take that computer and you're not going to like where it goes. You're going to talk funny after.
It says, would people still follow the Bible if Jesus was just replaced with the Easter Bunny? That's the question.
Who in the world?
Would people?
Somebody asked it.
Would people follow Jesus?
No.
The Bible.
Yes.
If Jesus was replaced by the Easter Bunny?
Yeah.
I say whoever wrote the question needs to
Get an egg.
think of a new one.
Alright, well, that's all the questions that I have.
Okay.
So, guess we'll...
I have one closing comment.
Well, okay.
Can you do that?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, sure, if you want any closing...
Yeah, closing comment is, there's no greater human being than this man right here. Despite his roughness and gruffness and storytelling, he's there for everybody. He's been there for me during my darkest times, moved me twice.
Oh, yeah, let me talk about those happy days.
That's another story. Took care of my kids when I couldn't. And there's no greater man. I love him to death, and he does that for everybody he's in contact with. Even today, I love you. He's my boy. And he's cute, too. How about it? Thanks for having us.
Not a problem at all. So I'm just going to quickly wrap things up here. So before I wrap everything up, I'd just like to say a couple thank yous. I'd like to thank both of you for taking time out of your day to come on to the show.
What do you take time out of our day? We were bored to death. Nothing to do. Your grandmother dragging us around from one furniture store to another furniture, antique shopping, flea. You think that would... Thank you. Thank you.
Dolores, come here and hit him. Can we introduce his wife? Come here, Dolores.
The camera shut off a little.
Oh no. Okay.
I'd like to thank my aunt for allowing us to host this here at this location, and I would like to thank you, the person who is either watching and or listening to this, to sit through this and listen to all these crazy, wacky stories.
True life stories.
Yeah, I said it when we started this.
True life.
You can't make this
That's
stuff
right.
up. This stuff, if people will hear some of the stuff I talk
Right.
about when we get going and I start to get animated, and they go, yeah, bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm going, yeah, you talk to every one of my cousins and my aunts and uncles, especially when they were alive. They will tell you things that I forgot to tell you.
Yes. Yeah.
No, you can't make this stuff up.
No.
It's you just can't. I mean, I can't. You can't.
Now, once you edit this, of course, you will send us. You will send it to us to review before you put it out there, or no? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Send me a
see.
copy. I'll
Oh,
give
yeah.
it to my therapist.